Welcome to Season 5 of the Manufacturers Network. Real talk with the people building what's next in manufacturing. And now your host, Lisa Ryan.
Hey, it's Lisa Ryan. Welcome to the Manufacturers Network podcast. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Joe Bockerstette. Joe leads Business Enterprise Mapping, a Phoenix-based firm that helps manufacturers streamline workforce flows and improve performance. A former PwC consulting partner with 4 decades in operations, supply chain, and private equity, Joe has co-authored several books on strategic process management and manufacturing excellence. So, Joe, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So share with us a little bit about your background and what led you to doing what you do.
Yeah, so I started out in Cincinnati, Ohio. I went straight into consulting out of college, and I was in the consulting industry for about 12 or 13 years, supply chain, became trained in just-in-time, one of the early adopters of just-in-time, applied it to non-traditional situations, wrote a book called Time-Based Manufacturing during that era. I left consulting in the early 90s. Moved up to Fort Wayne, Indiana, ran a group of small manufacturing companies with a private equity group. Eventually sold that out and became an angel investor. I started an angel fund in Indiana. Moved out to Phoenix in 2010 and joined Business Enterprise Mapping in 2013. So we are a boutique firm that specializes in very rapidly documenting workflows, identifying opportunities, and implementing change.
So what specific challenges does Business Enterprise Mapping help manufacturers solve?
Yeah, we're extremely proficient at looking at very large swaths of workflow quickly. Sales systems, marketing systems, product development, order to cash, human resources, looking at a batch of business processes over a large business system. And we're able to very rapidly identify what's taken place, what the opportunities are, and what the client can do to address those in sort of a time-paced fashion.
So when you're walking into a plant for the first time, what are some of the key performance indicators that you're looking at or looking for?
Yeah, so in general, what you're finding is order fulfillment isn't what we want it to be. Inventory is too high. Lead times are too long. The departments aren't syncing up well. For example, it's very common to find that information generated in sales, for example, customer information turns out to be inadequate once it comes time to ship product and bill. And so we're looking at the relationships across the large chain of flow and how the information syncs up or doesn't sync up and how that influences the operation.
So what are you finding that separates high-performing manufacturing organizations from the rest?
Yeah, so the difference between good and great is the synchronization of supply to demand and the syncing up of information flow to workflow to customer requirements, right? It all begins by understanding the end customer, what their requirements are in the deliverables we provide. And then moving back through the organization, we think that delighting the end customer comes as a series of delighting internal customers along the way. Most organizations do not have a good handle on their primary deliverables, products and services, and what goes into those products and services, and how those ultimately impact the revenue stream, customer satisfaction, and growth of the business.
So when you say delight a customer, how are you measuring that? What does that look like?
Yeah. So we use a concept called the customer value model, and the customer value model has 4 dimensions. The deliverable itself, either the product or services that we're providing our end customer, the responsiveness of our organization around that provision, the cost, of course, of that product or service, and then the ultimate support that wraps around that product or service. So when we talk about a customer delight, we're looking at the efficacy of the product or service we're delivering, the responsiveness of that deliverable, the cost of that deliverable, and the support that we provide the end user around that deliverable.
Okay. So what are some of the most common red clouds that you uncover on the shop floor, and exactly what is a red cloud?
So a red cloud is a term we use for problems and opportunities preventing us from achieving our goals, achieving our intention. And so whenever we map an organization, take order to cash, which would be very common, that might include, let's say 20 processes to pick a round number. Those 20 processes are going to have about 400 or 500 tasks, maybe 20 or 25 tasks to process. We know from experience that you can expect a little more than one red cloud per task on average. So that's maybe 500 red clouds. And we know that, again, based on experience, about 50% of those red clouds are quick wins. The red clouds that can be solved in less than 90 days without senior leadership approval or primary budget. And so we're simultaneously documenting your business model as we're mapping a piece of your business and identifying the red clouds that are preventing you from achieving what you're trying to achieve. Common red clouds: poor data, lack of synchronization between the supply side and the demand side, complexity, like we're not utilizing our ERP system in the ways that we want to, not understanding our internal customers, not measuring the right performance. It can be a host of things, but in the collection of those red clouds, they do tend to fall into about a dozen or so themes.
So you said that they were some of them that could be fixed in 90 days or whatever. So are there different shades of red from the, okay, we can fix this quickly, to this is bad?
So we tend to think of it in two ways. We do tend to think of it as quick wins and more systemic red clouds. And we also think of them in terms of red, yellow, and green. Red being the most severe, most immediate, in need of solutions, and the most important for solving. Yellow being, we need to solve them, but they're not a critical essential. Green being nice to have, but they can stand back a little bit while we go attack the other two, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how can process mapping directly enhance customer value in manufacturing?
So what process mapping does, it allows you to sync up a department to the end user requirements, whether it's sales department. What's the purpose of a sales department? The purpose of sales is to create customers and orders, right? And so in that purpose of bringing in new customers or bringing in new sales orders, we're going to have 10 or 15 processes: prospecting, contracting, lead generation, order entry, maybe customer demo, whatever it may be. And what you find in most organizations is those parts and pieces, bits and parts, are out of sync with one another. Each of those has a primary deliverable, the purpose of which a process is to create that primary deliverable. And what we're out to do are sync up those deliverables with the end purpose and define and design processes that create great deliverables along the way. So at the end of the day, it's not as complicated as most folks think it is. It's a matter of deconstructing that complexity in a way that everyone can understand, and makes it easy to determine what we can do to fix it and time phase those solutions, et cetera.
So when you were talking about that, I was visioning like a mind map, because I would think that sales would be also tied to engineering and operations and everything else. So does the process map look like a squiggly octopus, or what does it look like?
Let's start with process architecture. In any business, there's 12 standard business systems in any business, whether it's small, medium, large, doesn't matter the industry. In the value proposition systems, we've got customer system, the procurement system, the operations system, the solution system, and the service system, right? So those 5 systems all sync up to deliver value to the customer, drive revenues, create gross margins, et cetera. Then there's 5 resource systems, HR, IT, equipment, buildings, finance, and those systems are managing assets, right? Finance is managing cash, HR is managing people. So those systems provide assets that the value proposition systems are utilizing to make money, right? So you begin by deconstructing the 12 systems and then looking inside each of those systems, what processes exist in each of those systems for this particular enterprise. And then the maps themselves are step-by-step vertical maps very uniquely. So we have our own unique design we call the Paragon method. So we produce a Paragon playbook, which is a Paragon flow of how that process works, coupled with a whole lot of analytics behind it, the customer value model, the metrics, the responsibilities, the red clouds, the transactions, the information. So it's a fully blown manual of how that process works, what the opportunities are that come with that, and where we're heading as we work to improve that. The purpose of a process is to produce a great deliverable. Those deliverables are synced up to produce a great system purpose, right? Whatever that system may be.
And if somebody is just getting started and they have absolutely no systems in place and this all just sounds like gobbledygook, how are you getting the buy-in from the frontline teams, especially from the people who are involved when you're introducing these kind of workflow changes?
We do a tremendous amount of education in the delivery of our services. And our methodology, the Paragon method, engages the workforce from the day we begin relationship with the client. So we don't interview people. We don't go out and look, write stuff down and come back. We do everything that we do through workshops and team meetings. And so we facilitate groups of people and we diagram real time while we're leading that facilitation. And so we're educating you on what we're about to do. We facilitate you in doing it. And then we produce a deliverable that expresses the work that's been done. And then you couple those deliverables along a larger project path to ultimately deliver the outcome that makes a difference.
I'm sure that people listening to this show are thinking about that one really cranky person that they have working for them that just doesn't buy in anytime something is brought in new. So how are you dealing with that, and how are you educating your clients to turn these people around?
Yeah. So a couple of things. We use very senior, what we call program directors. So our folks are all semi-retired on the back end. They know how to map using our methodology. They know how to facilitate a room. They know how to handle conflict. They know business models. So it's a very seasoned delivery system that we have. We've been doing this for a little over 30 years. So we do the same thing the same way every time with our clients. So we're very good at getting to where we need to get to. Most resistant beginning client folks come around when they see the opportunity to really express how they do business, what the red clouds are that come with it. Nobody's ever asked me before, what prevents me from doing a better job, right? And then we have a series of workshops around synchronizing those flows. We have what we call a system alignment workshop that brings everybody together and looks at that flow in total. And that always creates aha moments for clients where it's, oh, now I see how the bigger picture works.
So what are the mistakes that managers make when trying to lean out their processes too quickly?
Yeah. So the largest red cloud, I'll put it that way, that we see in managers trying to lean out is looking at the details without understanding the whole. Like when you see, we'll start with some clients and they'll have 100 process maps of SOPs and maps and policies and procedures and this hodgepodge of documentation in an effort to improve something, but the thinking is small and they don't align with one another, right? They're disconnected. The way to attack an opportunity around leaning out an organization is to begin at the top and work your way down, right? What is the system that we're addressing? How well does that system sync up with its primary customer, right? So the biggest shortfall of lean manufacturing efforts is the lack of synchronization of supply to demand, right? Inventory is a direct consequence of an out of sync situation. You keep inventory because your supply is out of sync with your demand, right? And so you want to start at the top in terms of structure and understanding what's the volume, what's the variety, what's the velocity, what's the variation, what's the visibility of my demand, and how well is my supply side designed to sync up to that requirement? What's the bucket of time that demand is being used on? Starting on a shop floor, addressing a piece of equipment or a small flow is an inadequate way to get major improvement in a business.
So from a starting point where you really need to fix everything, but you also want them to flow smoothly together, how do you
Right.
prioritize where to start first?
Yeah. So in general, we tell clients to start where the pain points are the largest, which can be manufacturing. We have one large public client whose product development system was their biggest challenge, right? CPG company, very complex, lots of moving parts, very well-known brand, that sort of thing. So our point of view is let's go where the pain is, where the benefit is the greatest, and where your need for performance is the largest. Because you want to, when you're spending money with us and spending time with your people, you want to get a big bang for your buck and your time spent. We are excellent at looking at large amounts of workflow very quickly and figuring out what the red clouds are, what we need to do to address them, and helping clients sort through where we go from here.
So can you share an example of a plant that turned things around by rethinking its process mapping?
I can. Let me give you, this one will be off the beaten path. So we have a client, a mine in Bolivia, just to pick a good example. Is I think the largest mine in Bolivia. This client had just taken this mine over. It was in bankruptcy, and they brought in a new leader who we had worked with previously. And the leader brought us in, and we looked at the entire operation. I think it's well over 1,000 people. The entire operation, helping them sort out the business model they had, the business model they desired, the red clouds that got in the way, and then sort through the implementation to get from where they were to where they are today. And they went from a bankrupt mine to being one of the top 10% in the world in performance. And the foundation, so process mapping is the language of a foundational business model for improvement, right? So mapping processes, understanding how you do business and what the red clouds are that come with that, provides you with a portfolio of opportunity that you can then systematically attack over time. Now, with them, it took, let's say, 3 to 5 years. This wasn't a 90-day turnaround. Of course, that's self-evident, right? But the point is, it creates a roadmap that is very understandable and lays it on a platter to make choices about what we need to do and what the value of that is, where we need to start, where we're at today, what we need to do to get where we want to go. And it just really feeds strategy in a way that enables performance improvement.
And when you were talking about that, I see so much from a worker buy-in standpoint and a whole bunch of communication, because here you have a bankrupt mine, you have new leadership coming in, completely turning the place upside down, doing things that obviously the leadership team didn't do. So what were some of the things that leadership did right to get that buy-in and really to build those relationships they needed with those people, with their people?
Yeah. So their philosophy was you manage the business and you lead the people, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was very heavily built around the idea of education for the folks. This was an indigenous workforce, which actually became a benefit in our relationship. Sometimes clients think they know so much, they're not open to a different paradigm of how to do things, right? Which we bring to the table. In a client of this case, they were completely open to following our methodology to get from here to where they wanted to go. So leadership simultaneously provided an enormous amount of education to the workforce in productivity improvement, performance, business models, business management, et cetera, engaged us to engage the people to identify how they did work and what they wanted to do differently going forward, and then led that effort strategically over, again, let's say 5 years, that said, okay, now that we understand the cause and effect relationships to how we're performing today, we can lay out a roadmap for how we're going to go about addressing these in the future. The workforce in that particular situation was phenomenally good. They were self-sufficient. They were very oriented around fixing and improving. And so it was easy to engage with them, facilitate them to take the ball and run with it on improving the business that they were working in at the time.
So where does technology, AI, automation, data tools actually help? Where does it complicate things?
When we begin mapping an organization, our mapping exercise includes how these processes interact with technology. So we'll give you a current assessment of how technology impedes or enhances the flow of your process and deliverable. We also look at the information being created in the process and the deliverable that the process is producing relative to what the customer needs from their output. And IT, information, ERP, CRMs, HR systems, they always end up as a component of the solution for the work that we look at. But I'm telling you, that's maybe 20%. There's so many foundational. If you have crummy data, automating more is not going to make that any better. And so there are things like that. There's always pre-work that needs to be done prior to attacking the information technology component of that system, right? You want to define the process. You want to simplify the process. You want to implement that. Then you can automate in a way that enhances the flow and dramatically improves performance. But going straight to automation just leads to crummy results in a different way.
Yeah. So what's one simple metric that manufacturers should pay more attention to, but usually don't?
Yeah, a metric that we call ACT, accurate, complete, and timely, right? And when we look at primary deliverables across organizations, let's take product development as an example, right? What's the purpose of product development? The purpose of product development is to deliver a new product spec and new product prototype that can then be operationalized and commercialized, right? So the primary deliverable of that system of 10 or 15 processes is to deliver a spec that operations, sales, marketing can take and run with, right? What we find is virtually in every client we've ever worked with, they do not have a good definition of what should be in that new product specs, right? So accurate means it's got to be accurate to a specification that all parties agree to. So that spec's got to be agreed to by product development, sales, marketing, and operations, and probably procurement. So you've got to set a spec that all parties are satisfied with. Accurate means you're providing the information to that spec as defined. Complete means you're delivering all of that information as required, and timely means we're doing it on schedule, right? Now, when you look in organizations, very rarely do we measure performance of any of those non-product deliverables, right, or service deliverables, because doing that right enables that product to ship well on the other end. If you fail at that handoff in product development, sales, marketing, and ops, you're going to have problems in actually commercializing that and getting to market. Just one example.
Okay. So as we're getting to the end of our time together, how are you balancing efficiency with culture, especially when a lot of teams are already stretched thin?
Yeah. So let's talk about there real quickly. So when we look at a process, when we look at a business system, when we look at the enterprise, so effective is the value we provide our customer, right? It's the efficacy of that product or service and the value our customer receives from our product or service, right? The efficiency is the waste that is created in the delivery of that value. So efficiency tends to come down to cost, but it is actually the use of resources. Efficient means you're using resources, assets that are available to you to their maximum potential, right? And so that's the second component, efficiency. So compliant means I'm doing it according to the rules, right? And responsible means that I'm doing it ethically, treating people well, I'm complying with cultural standards, if you will. So when you look at the performance of a product, the business system, the enterprise, I want to be effective, meaning I'm adding value to my customers. I want to be efficient, meaning I'm utilizing my assets to their fullest potential. I want to be compliant because I want to play by the rules, and I want to be responsible because I want to treat my people well along the way and be a good corporate citizen in my area.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Boy, we covered a lot today. If somebody would like if somebody would like to continue the conversation with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, our website is www.businessmapping.com. My email is joe@businessmapping.com, or you can reach me on LinkedIn.
All right, Joe, thanks again for joining me today. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Lisa. I enjoyed it. Best wishes to you.
I'm Lisa Ryan, and this is the Manufacturers Network Podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Manufacturers Network Podcast. If this conversation gave you something to think about, share it with someone else who will get it. And hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next.